The last starliner, packed with refugees from a dozen dying worlds, shimmered into existence above the ochre plains of Xylos, their final desperate hope hanging heavy as the unfamiliar atmosphere. Among them Kaelen, an exo-botanist haunted by a silent, verdant past, scanned the alien horizon, his distrust a shield against false optimism, while Lyra, a Stardust Sylph whose true nature as a nexus point in an ancient prophecy remained veiled, felt the stirrings of a destiny intertwined with the very humans her people were taught to observe with cautious distance. A destiny that would force them both to confront the deepest shadows of prejudice. The air inside the designated acclimatization dome on Xylos was thick with the scent of recycled oxygen, fear, and the faint, metallic tang of the planet itself. Kaelen adjusted the seals on his enviro suit, his gaze sweeping across the barren landscape visible through the dome's viewport. Dust devils danced across cracked earth, a monochrome tableau of desolation. Xylos was supposed to be their sanctuary, a remote, sparsely populated world with just enough resources to sustain the tattered remnants of their convoy. He ran a hand over the patch on his sleeve, a stylized Terran fern, a memento of a career, a life that felt centuries distant. His specialty was coaxing life from unyielding soil, but here there was precious little soil to begin with, only dust and rock. He was calm, as always, a practiced stillness honed in countless high-pressure labs and perilous field expeditions. But beneath the calm, a current of wariness and suspicion ran deep. Too many promises had turned to ash. A subtle shimmer of light drew his attention. Across the crowded dome, near a sputtering nutrient dispenser, stood the alien female. Lyra, Stardust Sylph. Her people were ethereal, graceful, their skin a pale, almost translucent blue, dusted with what appeared to be microscopic, glittering particles that caught the artificial light, like captured nebulae. She moved with an unnerving fluidity, as if unbound by the same gravity that tugged at him. Perched on her shoulder, almost invisible against her shimmering hair, was a creature no bigger than his thumb, a lumiflay. He'd heard it called. It pulsed with a soft, internal light, its delicate, membranous wings beating too fast for the eye to follow, emitting a barely audible, high-pitched hum. The sylphs and their lumiflies were a biological enigma, their symbiotic relationship poorly understood. Lyra seemed oblivious to the stares, her large, iridescent eyes fixed on the parched world outside. There was an alien stillness about her, a profound quietude that Kaelen found both intriguing and unsettling. Her people, he knew from the scarce genealogical reports, valued experiences and knowledge over material wealth. Their concept of moments of shared joy, as currency, was baffling to most humans, including him. Physical touch, too, was reportedly reserved for only the most profound connections, a stark contrast to the casual embraces and handshakes common in human cultures. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the dome, not the familiar shudder of the atmospheric processors, but something deeper, more fundamental. The lights flickered, dimmed, then died, plunging them into an eerie twilight provided only by the emergency strips and Lyra's faintly glowing form. A collective gasp, then panicked shouts. Kaelen braced himself, his hand instinctively going to the utility belt where his multi-tool was holstered. Report, a gruff voice barked Commander Thorne, the convoy's grizzled security chief. Power outage, sir? Main conduits are dead. Backup generators. Negative, Commander. It's not just the dome. Kaelen felt it then, a strange, pervasive dryness in the air, a sudden, inexplicable drop in humidity that was almost painful. His botanist senses, finely tuned to atmospheric conditions, screamed a silent alarm. He looked towards the nutrient dispenser Lyra had been near. The water spigot moments ago dripping was now bone dry. A fine layer of crystalline residue coated its nozzle. Outside, the dust devils stilled. The very air seemed to thin. A horrifying thought, too outlandish to voice, began to form in Kaelen's mind. He pushed his way through the growing chaos towards the viewport, Lyra now turning from it, her luminous eyes wide, reflecting a dawning terror that mirrored his own. He reached the plasteel window and stared. The distant, hazy outline of what had been a small, seasonal lake, their primary hope for long-term survival, was gone. Not evaporated, not drained. Vanished. The ground where it had been was as cracked and dry as the surrounding desert, as if water had never existed there. He scanned the horizon. The few hardy, drought-resistant shrubs he'd cataloged from orbit, plants that clung to life by drawing moisture deep from the subsoil, were already wilting, their leaves turning brittle and brown before his eyes. The water. Lyra's voice was a soft whisper, barely audible above the rising panic, yet it cut through Kaelen's shock. Her lumiflame flicker pulsed erratically, its light dimming and flaring. It's all gone. It wasn't just the lake. It was all liquid water. The atmospheric humidity, the moisture in the soil, the reserves in their tanks, even the water content within the less resilient organisms. A silent, instantaneous desiccation of an entire world. Kaelen felt a prickle on his exposed skin, a sudden parched sensation. He touched his lips, they were already chapped. The screams in the dome intensified. People were clutching their throats, their eyes wide with disbelief and a primal fear. Commander Thorne was shouting orders, but his voice was already hoarse. Shawater reclamation units on the Hope. Get a signal out. Tell them what's happened. But Kaelen knew. If the planetary water was gone, the water in their bodies would be next. The dome's life support, robust as it was, relied on external water intake for long-term operation, especially for humidity control and oxygen generation through electrolysis. Lyra was looking at him, her usual ethereal calm shattered. This is not natural, she said, her voice raspy. Her lumiflame flicker detached from her shoulder and darted towards the viewport, its hum now a distressed, high-frequency whine. It tapped against the plasteel, then recoiled as if burned. No, Kaelen agreed, his mind racing, cataloging the impossibilities. This is targeted, engineered, but by whom and why? Xylos was a backwater. Or was it? Panic was a contagion. A man near the airlock clawed at the controls, desperate to escape, not understanding that outside was now a death trap. Thorne's men, already suffering from the rapid dehydration, struggled to maintain order. Kaelen saw the grim truth without immediate intervention. They had hours, perhaps a day, before mass organ failure. His scientific mind, usually a source of solutions, felt utterly overwhelmed. Then a new sound. A low, pervasive thrumming, felt more in the bones than heard with the ears. It seemed to emanate from beneath the ground, growing in intensity. The dome floor vibrated. Dust sifted from the ceiling struts. What now? Thorne roared, his face already flushed and tight. Lyra swayed, one hand going to her temple. Her lumiflame zipped back to her, nuzzling her cheek, its light now a faint, desperate plea. They are coming, she whispered, her gaze unfocused, as if seeing something beyond the dome walls. The collectors. Kaelen had heard whispers of the collectors. A parasitic species, shadowy, spoken of in hushed tones in the darker corners of galactic ports. They were rumored to infiltrate societies, to absorb and control. But what would they want with a dying world and a handful of refugees? Unless the water wasn't the target, they were. Or perhaps, just one of them. His gaze fell on Lyra. Her skin seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light, more pronounced than before. The microscopic stardust particles swirled around her like a miniature galaxy. There was something about her, an aura of untapped power, of significance that belied her delicate appearance. The xenological reports had mentioned prophecies among the Stardust Sylphs, ancient texts that spoke of a nexus point, a chosen individual who could bridge realities, a catalyst for profound change. And those prophecies, a dismissed footnote in his memory, often involved humans. The thrumming intensified, cracks spider-webbed across the viewport. The dome, their fragile shell of survival, was failing. We need to get out of here, Kaelen said. His voice surprisingly steady, the botanist replaced by the survivor, but not outside. He looked at the emergency access hatch to the sublevels, maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the fledgling colony. Maybe, just maybe, there was some residual moisture trapped deeper, or a way to an underground aquifer the initial scans had missed, or simply, a place to hide. Lyra met his gaze, a flicker of understanding in her luminous eyes. The raw fear was still there, but something else too, a nascent resolve. They will follow. Let them, Kaelen said, a spark of his quiet determination igniting. We're not dead yet. The immediate consequence of the water's disappearance was a swift, brutal thinning of the herd. Within the first hour, as Kaelen and Lyra scrambled through the cramped, stiflingly hot maintenance tunnels, the sounds of suffering from the dome above faded into an ominous silence. The air in the tunnels was marginally better, the metal framework offering some protection from the hyper-arid atmosphere, but it was a temporary reprieve. Their throats were like sandpaper, every swallow an agony. Kaelen's envirosuit had limited internal water recycling, designed for short EVAs, not planetary desiccation events. Lyra, remarkably, seemed to be faring slightly better, though her skin had lost some of its luminosity and flicker. Her lumiflame clung to her neck, its light a dull ember. The collectors. Why would they do this? Kaelen rasped, pulling himself over a tangle of fallen conduits. The thrumming from below was still present, a constant, unsettling vibration. Lyra paused, leaning against a rusted support beam. They consume, not just resources, they assimilate. Knowledge, societies, individuals. They seek control. Her breathing was shallow. The water, perhaps it was merely a way to flush out resistance. Or to isolate something specific. Kaelen looked at her. Something. Or someone. Her iridescent eyes met his, holding a depth of sorrow and a hint of something he couldn't quite name: resignation. Foreknowledge. The prophecies of my people speak of a nexus. A being whose existence resonates across folds in reality. Such a being could be a great power, or a great vulnerability. And you think you're this nexus? Kaelen asked, his inherent distrust making the question blunt. Lyra didn't flinch. I feel things. Connections. Echoes. The disappearance of the water. It felt like a string snapping, a connection severed on a vast scale. And the thrumming, it feels like something ancient and hungry awakening. She touched her chest, where Flicker rested. Flicker feels it too. It's a resonance of wrongness. Suddenly, a section of the tunnel ahead collapsed in a shower of dust and debris. A dark shape, vaguely humanoid but too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent at unnatural angles, scrambled through the opening. It moved with a jerky, puppet-like gait, its head swiveling, multifaceted eyes gleaming red in the gloom. A collector. Move! Kaelen yelled, shoving Lyra behind him. He drew his multi-tool, extending its hardened cutting edge. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was all he had. The collector emitted a chittering sound, a dry, insectile noise that scraped at the nerves. It lunged surprisingly fast. Kaelen sidestepped, bringing the multi-tool around in an arc. It glanced off the creature's chitinous hide with a shower of sparks. This was no mere scout, it was armored. Another collector dropped from a hole in the ceiling, flanking them. They were being herded. Lyra gasped, not in fear but as if struck. It's not just them, they are controlled. Puppets. She pressed her hands to her temples. There's a mind, a cold, vast intelligence directing them. Flicker suddenly flared, a brilliant pulse of turquoise light that momentarily dazzled the collectors. They recoiled, chittering in agitation. In that instant, Kaelen saw an opening, a narrow side passage, barely wide enough for one person. This way. He grabbed Lyra's arm, his touch rough, utilitarian. He felt a strange jolt at the contact, like static electricity, but there was no time to analyze it. Lyra, despite her people's aversion to casual touch, didn't pull away, her focus entirely on the threat. They squeezed into the passage, Kaelen leading, Lyra close behind. The collectors scrabbled at the entrance, their limbs too broad to follow easily. The thrumming intensified, and the ground beneath their feet bucked violently. The entire tunnel system was becoming unstable. This can't be a coincidence. Kaelen grunted, forcing his way through the narrow crevice. The water vanishing, the collectors appearing. This earthquake, it's all connected. They are driving us. Lyra said, her voice strained. Towards something. The narrow passage opened into a slightly wider shaft, descending steeply into darkness. There was no choice but to go down. As they descended, the air grew cooler, and Kaelen could feel a faint, almost imperceptible increase in humidity. Hope, a fragile seedling, tried to sprout in his chest. There's moisture here, he said, his voice hoarse but edged with renewed determination. Deeper. We need to go deeper. Lyra stumbled, and Kaelen caught her. This time, his hand lingered on her arm for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Her skin, though cool, felt incredibly smooth, almost alive beneath his touch. He pulled back, a flush rising on his neck, unseen in the darkness. Careful, the ground is unstable, she murmured, regaining her balance. Flicker pulsed softly, casting a faint glow around them. Kaelen, my people, we measure wealth in moments of shared joy, in unique experiences or contributions to collective knowledge. Kaelen, half sliding, half climbing down the treacherous shaft, grunted. Not much joy to be found here? Perhaps not, Lyra conceded. But survival, that is a unique experience. And sharing it, perhaps that has its own value. Her words, unexpected, disarmed him slightly. He'd been focused solely on the physical, the tactical. He glanced back at her shadowed form. Even in this desperate situation, there was a strange grace about her, an alien dignity. His distrust, while still present, was being chipped away by their shared peril. The shaft bottomed out into a vast cavern. The thrumming was deafening here, the air thick with an energy that made the hairs on Kaelen's arms stand on end. and in the center of the cavern, illuminated by an eerie blue light emanating from crystalline formations on the walls, was a structure. It was ancient, metallic, clearly not of silent origin. It looked like a colossal, buried engine, or perhaps a gateway. Strange symbols unlike any Kaelen had ever seen, pulsed with light on its surface. And standing before it, seemingly waiting for them, were more collectors. Dozens of them, but these were different. Larger, more heavily armored. And among them, one figure stood out taller, more slender, draped in what looked like shimmering, dark energy. It wasn't a collector drone. It felt like the puppeteer Lyra had sensed. So, a voice echoed in their minds, cold and precise, without sound, a direct mental intrusion. The nexus in her, human catalyst. You have arrived. This was the turning point. They hadn't escaped, they had been guided. The disappearance of the water, the pursuit through the tunnels, it had all been a manipulation to bring them here, to this ancient device, and to this powerful, unseen entity. Kaelen felt a cold dread. They were trapped, not just physically, but in a game whose rules they didn't understand. The entity, the source of the mental voice, took a step forward. Its form flickered, as if not entirely solid. The anomaly of Xylos served its purpose. A minor inconvenience to flush you from hiding, Sylph. Lyra stood straighter, her fatigue seeming to fall away, replaced by a chilling composure. Flicker pulsed a steady, defiant rhythm on her shoulder. What do you want with me? Want? The mental voice was laced with something akin to amusement, a crude term. I require your resonance. Your unique biological signature is key to reactivating this. It gestured a shadowy limb towards the massive device. The chronosynclastic infundibulum, a relic of the Forerunners, capable of adjusting realities, and, more pragmatically for my purposes, capable of transferring consciousness on a galactic scale. Kaelen's blood ran cold. Consciousness transfer, the core driving element of the collector's plan. To control minds, he voiced, though he knew the entity could hear his thoughts. Control is such a loaded term. Exo-botanist Kaelen, the entity responded, its attention briefly shifting to him. Kaelen felt a mental probe, light but invasive, scan his surface thoughts. His calm, his quiet determination. It felt as if the entity was cataloging his traits. Let us say standardization, homogenization. The galactic economy, a chaotic mess of competing species and flawed ambitions, will achieve unprecedented efficiency under singular, rational guidance. Your guidance, Lyra stated, her voice now tinged with ice. Precisely. The collectors, as you call my enthralled agents, are merely the first wave. Once this device is active, using your unique energy signature to amplify its reach, consciousness itself will become the ultimate currency, and I will be its sole banker. The entity gestured, and two heavily armed collectors moved to flank Kaelen and Lyra, their weapons humming ominously. Your cooperation would be appreciated, Sylph. It will make the attunement process less strenuous for you. Lyra looked at Kaelen. In her eyes he saw not just fear but a dawning, terrible understanding of her own significance and the weight of the prophecies she carried. He also saw a silent question. He, the distrustful human, and she, the ethereal sylph from a culture so different from his own, were now bound by this horrifying revelation. Their survival, and potentially the fate of countless minds, depended on them finding a way to fight back, together. We have a saying on my world, Kaelen said, his voice low and steady, meeting the entity's unseen gaze. Don't count your currency before it's minted. His hand tightened on his multi-tool. It was a pitiful defense against such power, but it was a symbol of his refusal to yield. The entity's mental laughter was like shattering glass. A human defiance. So predictable. So futile. This was it. The moment their superficial differences, their ingrained prejudices had to be shed. Kaelen, the pragmatic scientist, had always viewed the sylph's mystical leanings and unique biology with skepticism. Lyra, raised on tales of human impulsiveness and materialism, had kept her distance. Now, facing a common enemy with an unimaginable goal, those prejudices were luxuries they could no longer afford. The entity was forcing them to confront not just it, but themselves and what they could become if they found common ground. Lyra, Kaelen said, not taking his eyes off the entity. Your people measure wealth in moments of shared joy or contributions to knowledge. What's the going rate for saving the galaxy from a psychic megalomaniac? A faint smile touched Lyra's lips, a fleeting spark in the oppressive gloom. Priceless, Kaelen. Utterly priceless. Flicker, sensing the shift in her, pulsed a brighter, more hopeful light. Their forced proximity was no longer just about survival. It was about forging an alliance against an existential threat. The fight for love and new life, across the stars, had just found its true, desperate beginning. The entity gestured. Begin the attunement. The collectors advanced. Kaelen tensed, ready to sell his life dearly, but Lyra surprised him. She raised a hand, and a ripple of shimmering energy, like heat haze but infused with starlight, emanated from her. The advancing collectors faltered, their movements becoming jerky, disoriented. My resonance, Lyra said, her voice strained with effort, is not so easily claimed. Flicker, her lumifly, suddenly detached from her shoulder and zipped towards the massive device. It began to fly in intricate patterns around one of the glowing symbols, its hum changing pitch, becoming almost a song. The symbol pulsed in response, its light flickering erratically. What is it doing? Kaelen asked, astonished. Flicker is part of me, Lyra explained, sweat beading on her translucent brow. Our symbiosis is deeper than your science understands. It can interact with energies, with patterns. It's trying to disrupt the device, or understand it. The entity let out a mental hiss of annoyance. Insolent creature. Seize this interference. It raised a shadowy appendage, and a bolt of dark energy shot towards Flicker. No, Lyra cried. Kaelen reacted instinctively, shoving Lyra aside and throwing himself in the path of the bolt. He wasn't fast enough to completely intercept it, but he took the brunt of its edge. Searing pain shot through his shoulder, and he cried out, stumbling to one knee. His enviro suit sparked and smoked where the energy had hit. Kaelen. Lyra rushed to his side, her usual aversion to touch forgotten as she supported him. Her hand on his uninjured arm was surprisingly strong. Concern, genuine and profound, etched her features. The momentary distraction, however, had an unexpected consequence. With the entity focused on Kaelen, Flicker had managed to land on the targeted symbol. The lumifly glowed with an intense, pure white light, and the symbol beneath it suddenly went dark. A section of the massive device sputtered and died with a groan of protesting metal. The entity recoiled, a wave of mental frustration washing over them. You insignificant pests. You will pay for this. But the balance had shifted, however, slightly. Kaelen, gritting his teeth against the pain in his shoulder, looked at Lyra. Her eyes, wide and luminous, were fixed on him. In that moment, a barrier between them crumbled. His sacrifice, however impulsive, had been for her, for Flicker. Her concern for him was real, immediate. We need to create a real diversion. Kaelen rasped, pushing himself up. Can Flicker do more? It had overloaded that node, Lyra said, her gaze darting between Kaelen and the device. But it drained Flicker significantly. It needs time to recover. Flicker returned to her shoulder, its light dim, its tiny body trembling. Then we buy it time, Kaelen said. His distrust was gone, replaced by a grudging respect that was rapidly deepening into something more. Her quiet strength, her unexpected abilities, her fierce protectiveness of her symbiotic companion, these were not the traits of the detached, ethereal being he had initially perceived. The collectors, recovering from their brief disorientation, began to advance again, more cautiously this time. The entity was still focused on the damaged section of its device, a palpable aura of fury emanating from it. Your biology, Kaelen said, an idea forming. The stardust, the shimmer, is it just for show? Lyra shook her head. It's part of our energy metabolism. We absorb ambient stellar radiation, and we can redirect it. In small amounts. Small amounts might be enough, Kaelen said. The crystals on the walls. They're glowing. Can you draw energy from them? Lyra looked at the glowing formations. I have never tried with telluric energy. It's different. But perhaps, she closed her eyes, concentrating. The stardust particles on her skin began to glow more intensely, swirling around her. Kaelen could feel a subtle shift in the air, a drawing in of the cavern's ambient light. This section, developing trust and unveiling depths, would span multiple scenes and interactions as they fight their way out or find a temporary sanctuary. Let's focus on a few key moments. Their escape from the cavern was a desperate, chaotic affair. Lyra, drawing on the cavern's strange energies, managed to unleash a pulse of disorienting light that sent the collectors reeling, giving Kaelen the chance to target weak points in their armor with his multi-tool, now wielded with grim efficiency. His injured shoulder screamed in protest, but the adrenaline, and the sight of Lyra fighting with a fierce, desperate grace, spurred him on. They didn't defeat the entity, but they caused enough damage and confusion to force a tactical retreat into another network of tunnels. the entity's furious mental projections harrying them every step of the way. They found temporary refuge in a small, geothermal vent chamber, the heat a welcome change from the hyper-arid cold of the upper tunnels, and the faint steam providing a trace of life-sustaining moisture. Kaelen slumped against a rock wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Lyra gently tended to his shoulder, her touch surprisingly deft. The energy bolt had burned through his suit and seared his flesh. "This needs proper medical attention," she said, her voice soft. The starlight particles on her skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the vent, and Flicker, nestled in her hair, was slowly regaining its luminescence. "We'll manage," Kaelen said, wincing as she cleaned the wound with a strip of fabric torn from her own clothing, moistened with the scant condensation on the walls. You were incredible back there." Lyra paused, her Arisen eyes meeting his. "You threw yourself in front of that energy bolt." "For Flicker." "For me," Kaelen shrugged, uncomfortable with the intensity of her gaze. "Instinct, and it seemed like a good way to annoy that thing. My people believe that acts of selfless protection forge the strongest bonds," Lyra said quietly. "Even without touch, such an act is intimate." Kaelen felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the geothermal vent. The Sylph cultural quirk about physical touch being reserved for intimate bonds suddenly took on new meaning. Her tending to his wound, their hands brushing, the shared desperation these were forging something between them, something that transcended species and circumstance. "Tell me more about this nexus," Kaelen said, changing the subject, though his mind kept replaying her words. "And the prophecies. Why humans as catalysts?" Lyra settled beside him, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth radiating from her. A Flicker chirped softly, as if encouraging her. "The prophecies are ancient, fragmented. They speak of a time of great unraveling, when the fabric of realities frays. The Stardust Sylphs, it is said, were seeded across the galaxy long ago by the same Forerunners who built that device. We are meant to be stabilizers, conduits for cosmic harmony. But, a nexus like me, I am an amplifier. I can either mend the tears, or, if influenced by a discordant will, widen them catastrophically." She paused, tracing a pattern on the dusty floor with a slender finger. "The human role is less clear. They are described as the unexpected variable, the breakers of patterns, the heart of change. Your species is young, impulsive, often destructive, but also possessed of incredible resilience, adaptability, and a capacity for profound empathy and sacrifice. Qualities that can catalyze transformation. The prophecy suggests that a Sylph nexus, partnered with a human catalyst of specific resonance, can achieve what neither could alone." Kaelen processed this. A human catalyst. It seemed far-fetched. He was a botanist, a man of science and quiet observation. Specific resonance. What does that mean? "I don't know," Lyra admitted. "Perhaps it's a compatibility of spirit, or a shared destiny. When you shielded me, I felt a surge of energy, a connection that was unexpected. It wasn't just your physical act, it was the intent behind it. Your quiet determination, your calm under pressure, these are rare, even among my own people." He looked at their surroundings, the oppressive darkness, the distant, threatening thrum of the collectors. "We're a long way from cosmic harmony right now. Perhaps," Lyra said, a faint smile gracing her lips, "but we are together. And Flicker is recovering. Its connection to the device, it learned something. It felt an echo. Of our people and yours." "Our people." Kaelen frowned. "What do you mean?" "The device resonates with Sylph energy patterns, clearly. But Flicker also detected trace human pionic signatures embedded deep within its core programming, as if humans were involved in its creation, or perhaps its later modification. Long ago. This was a revelation. Humans involved with Forerunner technology of that magnitude. It contradicted every accepted tenet of galactic history, which painted humanity as relative newcomers on the interstellar stage. Over the next few days, or what they guessed were days, time being a fluid concept in the endless tunnels, they pushed onward, driven by the need to find a way to the surface, to warn others, to escape the entity's reach. Their conversations deepened. Kaelen learned about Sylph society, their communal way of life, their art forms that were woven from light and sound, their philosophy that valued moments of shared joy, not as mere sentiment, but as tangible contributions to the collective well-being. He spoke of Earth, of the vibrant ecosystems he dedicated his life to studying and preserving, a stark contrast to the sterile efficiency the entity envisioned. He confessed his initial distrust, his wariness with false hopes. Lyra, in turn, shared her fears about her role as a nexus, the immense pressure of a destiny she hadn't chosen but couldn't escape. They faced numerous challenges. Collapsing tunnels, pockets of toxic gas, collector patrols that they evaded through cunning, and Lyra's growing ability to sense their psychic spore. Kaelen's scientific knowledge proved invaluable in navigating environmental hazards, while Lyra's unique senses and Flicker's subtle guidance often led them to hidden passages or sources of scarce water. His calm under pressure steadied her when the weight of her prophesied role threatened to overwhelm her. Her quiet strength and otherworldly wisdom often provided him with new perspectives. One evening, huddled around a patch of faintly bioluminescent fungi Kaelen had identified as safe, Flicker suddenly began to hum a complex, melodic tune. The light it emitted pulsed in time with the melody, casting dancing shadows on the cavern walls. "What is it doing?" Kaelen asked, mesmerized. Lyra listened intently, her head tilted. A look of wonder spread across her face. "It's singing. A song of shared experience. It's cataloging this moment. Our survival, our conversation, the faint hope we still hold. It's creating a moment of shared joy, in its own way." Kaelen watched the tiny creature, its light reflecting in Lyra's iridescent eyes. He felt a pang in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long, long time. It wasn't quite joy, not yet, but it was a deep, resonant connection. To Lyra, to Flicker, to this shared struggle. "In my culture," Kaelen said slowly, "we don't have a direct equivalent, but I think I understand." He reached out hesitantly and gently touched Lyra's hand where it rested near the fungi. Her skin was cool, but a current, like starlight, seemed to flow beneath it. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled slightly, a fleeting, almost imperceptible acknowledgement of his touch. It was a small gesture, but for a sylph, it was monumental. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken emotions. His distrust had completely evaporated, replaced by a fierce protectiveness and a growing, tender affection. Her initial caution towards him had transformed into a deep reliance and a nascent, wondering warmth. The stakes escalated dramatically when Flicker, after a period of intense, silent communion with Lyra, suddenly projected a series of vivid images into both their minds. They saw the entity, whom Lyra now identified as a prime collector, a being that had assimilated countless consciousnesses, connected to the chronosynclastic infundibulum. They saw its plan not just to control minds, but to use the device to rewrite economic histories, to retroactively bankrupt rival species and corporations, positioning its own hidden networks, to seize control of all major galactic trade routes and financial institutions. It was a plan of audacious, terrifying scope. The water disappearance on Xylos was a trivial side effect of powering up the device for its initial test with Lyra. "It's already begun." Lyra breathed, her face pale. "It's sending out tendrils of influence, testing its control. Small market fluctuations, disrupted supply chains, a prelude to a complete economic collapse and takeover. We need to stop it," Kaelen stated, his quiet determination hardening into resolve. "But how? That thing is immensely powerful, and the device is ancient, complex." Flicker projected another image of vast, icy landscape. And embedded within a colossal glacier, something immense, skeletal, glowing faintly from within a frozen leviathan, as Lyra whispered. "What is that?" Kaelen asked. Flicker sensed it when it touched the infundibulum. Lyra explained. "A resonance. Another Forerunner construct, but dormant. And incredibly powerful. The Prime Collector is drawing auxiliary power from it, but it doesn't fully understand or control it. The leviathan is resisting, in its own way. Flicker believes the secret to disrupting the infundibulum, or perhaps even understanding our own species' connection to it, lies there." "A frozen leviathan," Kaelen mused. "Sounds like a pleasant vacation spot." Despite the grimness of their situation, a spark of his dry wit surfaced. Lyra actually smiled, a genuine, luminous smile that transformed her face, making Kaelen's heart skip a beat. "Perhaps we can define joy broadly." Their journey to the frozen leviathan was fraught with peril. The Prime Collector, sensing their intent or perhaps Lyra's growing connection to the dormant construct, intensified its efforts to capture them. Collector patrols became more frequent, more aggressive. They were no longer just drones. Some exhibited cunning tactics, as if guided by fragments of assimilated military minds. During one particularly narrow escape, they were cornered in a crumbling Forerunner transit station. Collectors were closing in from both ends of the platform. Kaelen was down to his last energy cell for his multi-tools cutting beam, his injured shoulder throbbing mercilessly. Lyra was exhausted, her starlight aura dim. This might be it, Kaelen said, bracing himself for the final stand. He looked at Lyra, at her determined face, the faint shimmer of stardust in her hair, the tired droop of flicker on her shoulder. He felt a surge of emotion so powerful it almost choked him. Love. It was an unexpected, terrifying, and utterly undeniable realization. He loved this alien woman, this Stardust Sylph, who had shown him courage, wisdom, and a capacity for connection he hadn't known he was missing. No, Lyra said, her voice surprisingly firm. She reached out and took his hand, her grip strong, her cool skin sending shivers down his spine. This time there was no hesitation, no cultural reticence. It was a declaration. The prophecies spoke of a human catalyst, of a bond that could change fate. Kaelen, I believe that bond is real. Between us. Her iridescent eyes locked with his. My people reserve touch for the deepest bonds. What I feel for you, it transcends custom. It is essential. Before Kaelen could respond, before he could voice the torrent of emotions her words unleashed, flicker, as if sensing the depth of their connection, began to glow with an astonishing brilliance. It flew from Lyra's shoulder into the space between them, its light pulsing, expanding, enveloping them in a warm, shimmering cocoon. Inside the light, the clamor of the attacking collectors faded. Kaelen felt a profound sense of peace, of rightness. He looked at Lyra, her face illuminated, her eyes shining with an emotion that mirrored his own. He leaned in, and she met him halfway. Their lips touched his, chapped and human, hers, cool and tasting faintly of starlight and ozone. It was a kiss that sealed their unexpected union, a promise made across the stars, in the face of annihilation. When the light subsided, the collectors were disoriented, stumbling, their weapons firing erratically. The transit station's ancient portal, long dormant, flickered to life behind Kaelen and Lyra, shimmering with an inviting turquoise light. Flicker. Lyra breathed, awestruck. It used our combined emotional energy, our bond, to activate the portal. Where does it go? Kaelen asked, still reeling from the kiss and the sudden turn of events. I don't know, Lyra admitted, but it's away from here. And perhaps towards the leviathan. She squeezed his hand. Together, together, Kaelen affirmed, his voice thick with emotion. He would follow her anywhere. They stepped through the portal, leaving the confused collectors and the dying world of Xylos behind, their love, and the hope for a new life, igniting a path through the unknown. The portal deposited them not directly at the frozen leviathan, but in a network of ice caves miles beneath it, the air biting cold but breathable. The transition was jarring, from the dusty heat of Xylos's underbelly to the crystalline chill of this new, frozen world. Flicker, exhausted but triumphant, nestled into Lyra's hair, its light a dim pulse. Well, Kaelen said, his breath misting in the frigid air. At least we don't have to worry about dehydration anymore. He rubbed his arms, trying to generate warmth. His standard enviro suit was not rated for these temperatures. Lyra, too, shivered, her translucent skin looking even paler in the icy gloom. The leviathan, it's close. I can feel its presence, a deep, ancient slumber, disturbed by the prime collector's probing. They pressed on, Kaelen using his multi-tool to chip away ice blocking their path, Lyra using her innate senses to navigate the labyrinthine caves, guided by the subtle resonance of the dormant giant above. Their conversations now were less about survival tactics and more about the future. A future they tentatively dared to imagine together. They spoke of what they would do if they succeeded, of finding a world where they could live in peace, where their disparate peoples might one day understand each other. The romantic connection, forged in shared terror and sealed by a desperate kiss, now deepened into a quiet intimacy, a comfortable reliance on each other's strengths. Kaelen found himself observing Lyra with a new intensity. The way the faint light caught the stardust in her hair, the subtle shifts and flickers glow that mirrored her emotions, the quiet determination in her eyes when she spoke of her people and the threat they faced. He was no longer just an exo-botanist. He was a man in love, willing to fight for that love and the life it promised. Lyra, in turn, saw past Kaelen's initial distrustful facade to the core of the man, his unwavering resolve, his sharp intellect, his deep, often unspoken, capacity for compassion. His calm was her anchor in the storm of her destiny. His touch, once a cultural taboo, was now a source of comfort and strength. She found herself leaning into his presence, seeking the steady warmth of his hand, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had become the cornerstone of her courage. As they drew closer to the leviathan, the Prime Collector's psychic presence grew stronger, more agitated. It knew they were near its power source. It sent waves of mental despair, trying to break their will, images of failure, of loved ones lost, of a galaxy succumbing to its cold, rational order. It's trying to unmake us from within. Lyra gasped, clutching her head during one particularly vicious psychic assault. Kaelen pulled her close, shielding her with his body, his mind a fortress of calm determination. Don't listen to it, Lyra. It feeds on fear. Focus on us, on what we're fighting for. He held her tight, his own anxieties pushed aside by the need to protect her. His touch, his unwavering belief in her, helped her push back the psychic shadows. Your mind, it's so ordered, Lyra murmured, leaning against him, drawing strength from his solidity. It's like a shield. Years of cataloging alien flora, Kaelen said with a wry smile, teaches you to compartmentalize. Flicker, sensing the Prime Collector's mental attacks, began to emit a soft, counter-frequency hum, a subtle shield of its own that seemed to soothe the jagged edges of the psychic assault. It was learning, adapting its bond with Lyra, and now, strangely, with Kaelen evolving. Finally, they emerged from the ice caves into a colossal cavern, so vast it felt like an underground sky. And there it was, the frozen leviathan. It was not a ship, nor a biological creature, but something in between, a biomechanical marvel of immense antiquity, its skeletal framework, like the ribs of some mythical beast, fused with crystalline structures that pulsed with a faint, internal light. It was embedded in a sheer wall of ancient, blue-black ice, only partially visible, its true scale impossible to gauge. Strange energies, cold and powerful, radiated from it. By the first stars, Lyra breathed, awestruck. Incredible, Kaelen agreed, his scientific curiosity battling with a primal sense of awe and trepidation. This makes the infundibulum look like a child's toy. But they were not alone. The Prime Collector was there, or rather, a powerful projection of it, shimmering like a heat haze distortion in the frigid air. And with it a new type of collector, larger, sleeker, armed with weapons that crackled with dark energy. These were not mere puppets, they were elite guards, their minds more tightly bound to the Prime Collector's will. So, the catalyst and the nexus arrive at the heart of the matter. The Prime Collector's mental voice boomed, echoing through the vast cavern. Did you truly believe you could disrupt my grand design? This leviathan is but a battery for my endeavors. Its secrets are irrelevant. We're here to pull the plug. Kaelen retorted, his multi-tool humming to life, its last energy cell hopefully enough. Lyra stepped forward. Flicker a bright spark on her shoulder. This ancient power is not yours to command. Its purpose is not for domination. The Prime Collector's projection solidified, taking on a more defined, almost regal form, wreathed in shadows. Purpose is what I give it, as I will give purpose to your species, Sylph, and to the chaotic rabble of humanity. The elite collectors advanced, their movements fluid and deadly. The final confrontation was about to begin. Kaelen and Lyra exchanged a look of love, of shared resolve, of a willingness to face whatever came next together. The rising action had reached its peak, the climax was upon them. The cavern air crackled with anticipation. The Prime Collector, a vortex of shimmering darkness, loomed before the immense, frozen leviathan. Its elite guards, a dozen sleek obsidian figures, fanned out, their energy weapons casting predatory gleams on the ice. Your defiance ends here. The Prime Collector's mental voice thundered, shaking the very ice beneath their feet. The infundibulum is already recalibrating. Soon, its reach will be absolute. Your little escapade has bought the galaxy mere moments. Kaelen positioned himself slightly in front of Lyra, his multi-tool held ready, its beam emitter focused. We'll only need one moment. His calm was a stark contrast to the swirling chaos of the Prime Collector's energy. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. We fight as one. Flicker on her shoulder pulsed in agreement, its light intensifying, resonating with the dormant power of the leviathan behind them. A faint hum emanated from the frozen giant, as if it were stirring in its icy slumber. Attack! The Prime Collector's command was a psychic shockwave. The elite collector surged forward. Kaelen met the first charge, his multi-tool spitting a concentrated beam of energy that seared through one collector's shoulder joint, sending it staggering. He moved with a focused economy of motion, the quiet determination now a deadly precision. But there were too many. Lyra extended her hands. Starlight particles swirled around her, drawn not just from her own reserves, but seemingly amplified by the leviathan's proximity. She unleashed a wave of pure, incandescent light, not just disorienting this time, but a concussive blast that sent 3 collectors skidding across the ice, their systems momentarily shorting out. Impressive, Sylph. The Prime Collector sneered, unmoved. But raw power is meaningless without control. It gestured, and 2 collectors armed with heavy energy cannons took aim at Lyra. Kaelen saw the danger. Lyra down. He tackled her, pulling them both behind a jagged outcrop of ice just as searing bolts of dark energy slammed into where they'd been standing, exploding ice and rock into razor-sharp shrapnel. Thanks. Lyra gasped, her breath clouding in the frigid air. Its control over them is absolute. We need to get to the Leviathan itself, Kaelen said, peering around their cover. Flicker said the secret was there. Can it guide us to a weak point, something we can use against the Prime Collector, or the infundibulum? Flicker zipped from Lyra's shoulder, darting towards the massive, frozen structure. It flew in a spiraling pattern towards a section of the Leviathan where a series of large, crystalline conduits pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, almost like a heartbeat. There? Lyra pointed. Those conduits, they seem to be channeling the energy the Prime Collector is siphoning. If we can disrupt them, then we cut off its power surge to the infundibulum. Kaelen finished. And maybe wake up whatever this Leviathan truly is. The Prime Collector, sensing their intent, focused its attention on Flicker. Annoying insect, dark tendrils of energy lashed out, trying to swat the Lumaflay from the air. Flicker, agile and impossibly fast, evaded the tendrils, its hum rising to a piercing shriek that seemed to resonate with the Leviathan's own energy. The crystalline conduits pulsed faster, brighter. It's creating a feedback loop, Lyra exclaimed. Kaelen, we need to help it. The Prime Collector is trying to overwhelm it psychically too. Kaelen knew his mental defenses were nothing compared to the Prime Collector's. But Lyra was a nexus. Can you shield Flicker, reinforce its efforts? I can try, Lyra said, closing her eyes. She focused her will, her starlight aura flaring, extending a shimmering tendril of her own energy towards Flicker, creating a protective cocoon around the tiny creature. The Prime Collector's mental assault intensified and Lyra cried out, clutching her head. But she held firm. Kaelen knew this was their chance. While Lyra and Flicker battled the Prime Collector on the energetic and psychic planes, he had to deal with the physical threat. He broke cover, drawing the fire of the remaining elite collectors. His multi-tool, its energy cell rapidly depleting, became a desperate defensive weapon. He dodged, weaved, using the icy terrain to his advantage, his calm demeanor allowing him to think tactically even under immense pressure. He wasn't just an exo-botanist anymore. He was a warrior fighting for everything he held dear. One collector got too close, its energy blade hissing. Kaelen ducked under the swing, slammed the butt of his multi-tool into its optical sensor, then fired a point-blank burst into its exposed neck joint. It collapsed, sparking and twitching. But another took its place, and another. He was being overwhelmed. His shoulder wound throbbed, his movements becoming slower. Kaelen? Lyra cried out, her concentration wavering as she saw his plight. Focus on Flicker? Kaelen yelled back, parrying another energy blade. I can handle these tin cans? He couldn't, not for much longer, but he needed her to succeed. Suddenly a deep, resonant hum shook the cavern. The ice around the Leviathan cracked and groaned. The crystalline conduit's Flicker had been targeting flared with an almost blinding light. The Leviathan was awakening. A wave of immense, ancient consciousness washed through the cavern, not hostile, like the Prime Collectors, but vast, cold, and powerful. It was the mind of the Leviathan itself. It seemed to assess the situation, to recognize the Prime Collector as a parasite, Lyra as a kindred spirit, and Kaelen as an ally. The elite collectors faltered, their connection to the Prime Collector momentarily disrupted by the Leviathan's awakening. The Prime Collector itself recoiled, its shadowy form flickering wildly. No! This power is mine! It will obey! But the Leviathan had other ideas. Beams of pure, cold energy erupted from its crystalline structure, not aimed at Kaelen or Lyra, but at the elite collectors, encasing them in shimmering fields of stasis. Within seconds, the remaining guards were frozen mid-stride, inert. Kaelen stared astonished. What just happened? Lyra opened her eyes, a look of profound wonder on her face. The Leviathan, it's sentient. And it's helping us. Flicker, now glowing like a miniature sun, zipped back to Lyra, chirping triumphantly. The Prime Collector, however, was far from defeated. Insolent relic, you will be unmade. It gathered its dark energies, coalescing into a spear of pure shadow aimed directly at the heart of the leviathan, at the conduits Flicker had targeted. It's going to destroy the conduits, Lyra warned. If it does, the feedback could destroy the leviathan and us with it. There was no time to think. Kaelen saw the spear of darkness forming. Lyra was too far away to intercept, and still recovering from her psychic exertion, his multi-tool was nearly depleted. He had only one option. With a defiant roar, Kaelen charged, putting himself directly between the Prime Collector and the Leviathan's vulnerable conduits. He raised his multi-tool, not to fire, but as a shield, knowing it would be useless against such power. It was a suicidal gesture, an act of pure, desperate sacrifice. The Spear of Darkness launched. But just as it was about to strike, Lyra screamed, "No!" A torrent of starlight, more powerful than anything she had summoned before, erupted from her, amplified by her bond with Kaelen, by her love for him, and by the resonating power of the awakened Leviathan. It slammed into the side of the dark spear, deflecting it just enough. The spear missed Kaelen by inches, striking the ice wall beside the conduits with a cataclysmic explosion that sent shockwaves through the cavern. Kaelen was thrown backwards, hitting the ice hard, his vision swimming. The Prime Collector, its attack thwarted, let out a screech of pure fury. But it was weakened, its energy depleted by the massive attack and Lyra's unexpected counter. And then, the Leviathan acted. A focused beam of its cold, ancient energy lanced out, not with destructive force, but with a strange, encompassing light. It struck the Prime Collector, and the shadowy entity began to unravel, its form destabilizing, its psychic voice fracturing into 1,000 screaming echoes. "This is not the end, The fragmented voices hissed. "The Collectors are legion, we adapt. We return." Then, with a final, silent implosion, the Prime Collector's projection vanished. The oppressive psychic presence that had haunted them for so long was gone. Kaelen lay on the ice, gasping for breath, his body battered. Lyra rushed to his side, her face a mask of terror and relief. "Kaelen, are you all right?" He managed a weak grin. "Never better. Did we win?" Lyra looked at the silent, now gently pulsing Leviathan. Flicker nuzzled Kaelen's cheek, its light soft and warm. I think we did." The immediate aftermath was a profound, echoing silence in the vast ice cavern. The only sounds were their ragged breaths, the faint hum of the awakened Leviathan, and the occasional drip of melting ice from the energy discharges. Kaelen, with Lyra's help, slowly sat up, wincing. Every muscle ached, and his shoulder wound was a fiery agony. But he was alive. More importantly, Lyra was alive, and the Prime Collector was gone. The infundibulum. Kaelen rasped, his throat raw. "Is it?" Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, her connection to Flicker and now, faintly, to the Leviathan, giving her a broader sense of the energies at play. "The power surge has been cut. The device on Xylos, it's gone dormant. Its attempt to control the galactic economy aborted." A wave of relief washed over her face. "We stopped it?" Kaelen reached out, his hand finding hers. Her fingers, cool and slender, intertwined with his, a grip of shared victory and profound connection. "We stopped it," he echoed, the words sinking in. The Leviathan pulsed with a soft, blue light. Then, a new voice, ancient and resonant, not in their minds, but seemingly in the air around them, like the chiming of colossal ice crystals. "The balance is temporarily restored. The parasite is banished from this node." Kaelen and Lyra stared at the immense construct, speechless. "You can speak." Lyra finally managed, her voice filled with awe. "I am a guardian," the Leviathan's voice intoned, "one of many seated by the Forerunners. My purpose was to safeguard this nexus of realities and to await the confluence." "Confluence?" Kaelen asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his exhaustion. "The Stardust Sylphs," the Guardian continued, its light focusing gently on Lyra, her descendants, carriers of the Forerunner's resonant legacy. "You, Lyra, are a nexus, a key to unlocking deeper understanding. And humans," its light shifted to Kaelen. "Humans are the inheritors. Unpredictable, yes. Flawed, yes. But possessing a unique spark, a capacity for rapid evolution of consciousness and empathy that the Forerunners themselves lacked in their later eons. Inheritors." Kaelen was stunned. "But our history, we're young, technologically. Your recorded history is but a fragment," the Guardian explained. "Your species was shielded, allowed to develop along a different trajectory after a great schism among the Forerunners. Some sought to control evolution, to impose order. Others believed in allowing potential to unfold naturally. Humanity, in its raw, untamed state, represented that potential. The infundibulum was a tool of the control faction. My kind were built to counter such imbalances. Lyra looked at Kaelen, her eyes wide with revelation. The prophecies humans as catalysts. It wasn't just about me. It was about our species linked from the very beginning. Indeed, the Guardian affirmed, the true origin of your species, human, is intertwined with the final grand experiment of the Forerunners, who valued potential over rigid design. They saw in your adaptability the future they could no longer achieve. The Stardust Sylphs were created as symbiotic guides, gentle weavers of cosmic harmony, intended to connect with humanity when both species reached a certain stage of readiness. Kaelen's mind reeled. Everything he thought he knew about human history, about their place in the galaxy, was being rewritten. And his role, Lyra's role, it was far greater than just stopping one parasitic entity. The Collectors, Kaelen said, remembering their parting threat. They said they'd return. They are a persistent blight, the Guardian acknowledged. A corruption of an earlier Forerunner experiment in collective consciousness. They will seek other nodes, other means of control. But now you know of them. And you, Lyra, as a nexus, and you, Kaelen, as an awakened inheritor, carry the knowledge and the potential to rally others. The Leviathan's light began to dim slightly. My activation was strenuous. I must return to my slumber to gather strength, but I will leave you with a gift. A section of the ice wall near them shimmered and dissolved, revealing a small, sleek shuttlecraft, clearly Forerunner in design, its interior glowing with a soft, inviting light. This vessel will take you from this world, the Guardian said. It contains star charts, historical data, the truth of your shared heritage, and it is keyed to your unique energy signatures. Go learn, grow. The galaxy needs what you will become. Kaelen and Lyra looked at each other. The path ahead was uncertain, vast, and undoubtedly dangerous, but they would face it together. Their love, born in the crucible of shared disaster and unexpected union, was now imbued with a profound purpose. Thank you, Lyra said, her voice filled with gratitude, bowing her head slightly towards the immense Guardian. Thank you? Kaelen echoed, a deep sense of responsibility settling upon him. They boarded the Forerunner shuttle. As the hatch sealed, the Guardian's final words echoed around them. The confluence has begun. Fight for love. Nurture new life. Across the stars, you are the unexpected hope. The shuttle lifted silently, phasing through the roof of the ice cavern and out into the star-dusted void above the frozen world. Kaelen took the controls, which responded intuitively to his touch, the navigation system already displaying a course to a nearby neutral system. Lyra sat beside him, her hand resting on his, flicker a warm, comforting presence on her shoulder. They were injured, exhausted, but a profound sense of peace and a daunting sense of purpose filled the small cockpit. Their personal choice to fight, to trust, to love, had indeed unveiled a truth with implications for the entire galaxy. A few weeks later, in a quiet sector of the Attican Traverse, the Forerunner shuttle drifted silently near a vibrant, sapphire blue nebula. Inside, Kaelen and Lyra, now healed and rested, pored over the historical data files provided by the Guardian. The sheer scope of what they were learning was breathtaking. The true, ancient history of humans and Stardust Sylphs, their intertwined destinies, the Un's long philosophical war among the Forerunners, it was a universe far older, stranger, and more wonderfully complex than either of them had ever imagined. So, my people weren't just observers, Lyra mused, tracing a glowing holographic schematic of a Sylph migration route that predated recorded human history by millennia. We were guides in waiting. Waiting for humanity to be ready to understand its own potential, its own legacy as inheritors. Kaelen nodded, looking out at the swirling colors of the nebula. And my species, we weren't just aggressive upstarts. We were a grand experiment in freedom, in the power of the unexpected. The herd of change, as your prophecies called us. He smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile that reached his eyes. It seems we were always meant to find each other, across the stars. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of Xylos and the frozen leviathan, had deepened into an unshakable bond. The cultural differences that once seemed like barriers were now sources of fascination and mutual enrichment. Kaelen found a strange beauty in the Sylph concept of moments of shared joy, and Lyra, in turn, was beginning to understand the fierce, protective loyalty that drove human connections. Physical touch, once so restricted for her, was now a natural language between them, a hand held, a comforting arm around a shoulder, a lingering kiss under the light of distant stars. Their love was a testament to the unexpected unions the galaxy could foster. Flicker perched on the console, trilled happily, its light reflecting the nebula's hues. It too seemed to be thriving, its abilities growing in subtle ways, its connection to Lyra, and even to Kaelen, becoming more profound. The collectors are still out there, Kaelen said, his expression turning serious. The Guardian warned us. They'll be looking for other ways to enact their plan. Lyra met his gaze, her own filled with resolve. Then we'll be ready. The data from the Guardian, it doesn't just tell us about the past. It hints at other dormant Guardians, other nexus points, other species the Forerunners touched. We can build an alliance, a network of resistance based on shared knowledge and mutual respect, not control. A new kind of galactic economy. Kaelen mused, based on shared understanding and the true wealth of diverse experience, not manipulated markets. It was a daunting task, but the thought of it no longer filled Kaelen with distrust or wariness. It filled him with a quiet determination, amplified by Lyra's unwavering belief and the love that bound them. They had faced annihilation and found not just survival, but purpose in each other. Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. The Guardian said to nurture new life. A soft smile played on her lips. Perhaps that applies to more than just civilizations. Kaelen's arm went around her, pulling her close. The thought of a future with Lyra, a life built together, perhaps even a family that blended their two unique heritages, filled him with a hope so profound it was almost painful. I think, he said, his voice thick with emotion, that's the most important mission of all. The Forerunner shuttle, a tiny spark of hope against the vast canvas of space, altered its course, heading towards the coordinates of a system rumored to house an ancient, hidden library of interspecies knowledge. Their fight for love had saved a world and revealed a universe of new possibilities. Now, their fight for a new life, for a future where humans and sylphs and countless other species could thrive, was just beginning. Across the stars, their unexpected union was a beacon, promising that even in the darkest of times, connection, understanding, and love could forge a path towards a brighter dawn. The galaxy was vast, and its challenges many, but with Lyra by his side, Kaelen knew they were ready for whatever came next. Their journey was far from over. It was a new genesis,